You comfortable? My wife Mary asked, hovering near the chair. She kissed my forehead and disappeared through the double doors. Then the nurse said, You deserve to know what your wife's doing when you're asleep. I freaked out. Look, I'm not saying the chemo chair is the worst piece of furniture ever invented, but I'm also not saying it. Picture this. Someone took a lazy boy, stripped it of all dignity and comfort, wrapped it in hospital-grade vinyl that sticks to your skin like cling wrap on a hot day, and then installed enough medical equipment around it to make NASA jealous. That's where I was planted on a Tuesday afternoon, feeling like an astronaut preparing for the world's most depressing mission to absolutely nowhere. The chair hummed. Everything in this place hummed, beeped, or made some kind of robotic death rattle that I'm pretty sure was designed to remind you exactly where you were, as if the smell wasn't doing enough heavy lifting already. And oh, that smell. It's this special cocktail of industrial-strength bleach, hand sanitizer, and what I can only describe as crushed dreams with a hint of lemon. They should bottle it and sell it as Ode to Bad News. It'd be a bestseller in the world's most depressing gift shop. The 4 needles slid into my arm with practiced efficiency, and I watched the clear liquid start its slow crawl through the tubing. Cold. Why is it always so cold? It felt like someone was injecting me with liquefied disappointment, or maybe that cheap tequila your buddy swears is actually pretty smooth, but definitely gave you a 3-day hangover in college. You know the one. We've all been there. Except this particular cocktail was supposed to save my life, so I guess I couldn't complain too much. Well, I could, but who'd listen? My wife, Mary, stood beside my throne of medical misery looking like she'd just stepped out of a Hallmark movie about a devoted spouse standing by her suffering husband. She had that look down pat, the concerned eyebrow furrow, the supportive hand on my shoulder, the perfectly coordinated outfit that somehow managed to look both casual and, I definitely tried. She leaned in close, and for a second, I thought maybe we were having a moment. You know, one of those deep, meaningful connection things that supposedly happen when you're facing your mortality together. You comfortable? She asked, her voice dripping with what I'm now realizing was probably fake concern, but at the time just sounded like a wife asking her husband a reasonable question. I nodded, because what else was I going to say? No, honey, I'm hooked up to poison and sitting in a chair that's making my butt sweat, but thanks for asking. Sometimes you just nod and play along with the social niceties, even when your body is staging a full-scale rebellion against everything that's happening to it. She kissed my forehead, this quick, polite little peck that reminded me of how you'd kiss your grandmother at Thanksgiving. Obligatory. Perfunctory. The kind of kiss that says, I'm doing this because it's expected, rather than, I love you and this situation terrifies me. And then, before I could even process the weird emotional emptiness of that gesture, she was gone. Bolted through those double doors like the building was on fire, moving faster than I'd seen her move in years. Faster, even, than my 4-drip was currently crawling into my bloodstream. I sat there for a minute, watching other patients in their own recliners of doom. There was an older guy across from me, maybe 70s, reading a Tom Clancy novel like he was sitting on a beach in Florida instead of slowly being pumped full of chemicals. Next to him, a woman about my age was knitting something that looked like it might eventually become a scarf, or possibly a very long hat. The clicking of her needles provided a weird sort of rhythm to the room's symphony of beeps and hums. We didn't make eye contact. Nobody makes eye contact in the chemo room. It's like an unspoken rule. We're all here. We're all going through our own personal hell. And the last thing anyone wants is forced camaraderie with strangers who remind you of your own mortality. That's when she appeared. Nurse Linda materialized next to my chair like she'd been summoned by some kind of medical bat signal. Silver hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, sharp eyes that had clearly seen every possible human drama unfold in this room, and the kind of presence that immediately made you sit up straighter even when you were hooked up to N4. This was a woman who'd probably dealt with more chaos before breakfast than most people experience in a lifetime. She had that look, the one that says, I've seen it all, I'm tired, but I'm still here because somebody has to be the adult in the room. She started checking my vitals and adjusting my 4 with the kind of practiced efficiency that comes from doing the same thing approximately 8,000 times. Her movements were precise, methodical, almost robotic in their perfection. But then she paused, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, and I saw something flicker across her face. Pity? Concern? Indigestion from the cafeteria's mystery meat? You deserve to know what your wife's doing when you're asleep, she said, just like that. No preamble. No, hey, how are you feeling? Just dropped that bomb right into my lap like she was commenting on the weather. I froze mid-sip of the hospital-provided juice box they'd given me. Some kind of apple-adjacent liquid that tasted like someone had described apple juice to an alien who'd never actually tasted fruit. The tiny straw hovered near my lips as my brain tried to process what she'd just said. Excuse me. I managed to croak out, my voice doing that weird thing where it goes up an octave because your body is having trouble deciding whether to laugh, cry, or just shut down entirely. Is that part of the treatment plan? Because I gotta tell you, Linda, the brochure didn't mention this particular side effect. The sarcasm was automatic, a defense mechanism I perfected over years of dealing with uncomfortable situations. Make a joke, deflect, pretend everything's fine even when it's definitely, absolutely, 100% not fine. It's the American way, really. We're masters of uncomfortable laughter and awkward humor in the face of genuine horror. Linda didn't laugh. She just looked at me with those sharp, all-knowing eyes, and I realized with a sinking feeling in my gut, a feeling that had nothing to do with the chemicals currently coursing through my system, that she was dead serious. This wasn't some weird joke or bizarre small talk. She had information, and apparently, she'd decided that today, right now, while I was literally tethered to a machine and couldn't run away, was the perfect time to share it. Around us, the chemo room continued its normal rhythm. The old guy turned a page in his thriller. The knitting needles kept clicking. Machines beeped their steady, uncaring rhythm. And I sat there, juice box in hand, for an arm, waiting for my entire world to shift on its axis. We need to talk, Linda said quietly, pulling up a stool. And you're going to want to hear this. Okay, so let me rewind this disaster movie about 3 weeks, back to when I was still blissfully ignorant and thought my biggest problem was the fact that my hair was falling out in clumps that made our shower drain look like a crime scene. Back then, I was still operating under the delusion that my wife loved me, that cancer was my only enemy, and that the worst betrayal I'd face would be my own body trying to kill me. Cute, right? I was so naive I could have starred in a Disney movie. It started with the smiling. Now, Mary had always been a relatively smiley person, not like one of those aggressively cheerful people who act like they've just snorted a line of pure sunshine, but normal-level happy. She smiled at cute dogs, at funny commercials, at me when I'd do something deliberately stupid to make her laugh. Standard wife stuff. But about 3 weeks into my chemo treatment, I noticed something had changed. She was smiling at her phone. A lot. Like, a concerning amount. The kind of amount that makes you wonder if she'd discovered some kind of digital drug or joined a cult that operated exclusively through text messages. At first, I genuinely thought she'd finally discovered TikTok. I mean, I'd been trying to get her to join the 21st century for years. The woman still had a Facebook account she actually used, like some kind of technological dinosaur. So when I saw her giggling at her phone screen, my first thought was, finally, she's discovered videos of people falling down or dogs doing stupid tricks or whatever makes people lose 3 hours of their life scrolling. I was almost proud. Look at my wife, I thought, embracing modern technology and finding joy in silly internet content while her husband slowly transforms into a sentient thumb. But then I caught a glimpse of what she was actually doing, and let me tell you, it wasn't TikTok. I'd shuffled into the kitchen one evening. And yes, I was shuffling by then, because chemo turns you into basically a zombie that's allergic to everything. Looking for some crackers that wouldn't make me immediately want to hurl. Mary was at the kitchen table, phone in hand, and I saw her fingers flying across the screen. Then she giggled. Actually giggled. Like a teenager. Like someone who'd just heard the funniest thing in the entire world. Being the nosy husband that I am, I leaned over her shoulder, not suspicious yet, just curious, and caught the tail end of her message before she tilted the phone away. Haha, you're so bad-faced with tears of joy, followed by another emoji that I'm pretty sure was winking. The text was in that thread of blue bubbles that meant she was texting another iPhone user, and there were a lot of bubbles. Like, novel-length conversation bubbles. Who's that? I asked, trying to sound casual, like I was just making conversation and not like my brain had just started doing complex mathematical equations trying to figure out who the hell made my wife giggle like that. "Oh, just Sarah from book club," she said smoothly, clicking her phone off faster than I could focus my chemo-addled brain on the name at the top of the screen. She sent me a funny meme. Sarah. Right. Sarah from book club, who apparently texted in lowercase and used the crying laughing emoji. Sure. That seemed totally normal and not at all suspicious. I let it go because, honestly, what was I going to do? Accuse my wife of what? Laughing at memes. I was probably being paranoid. The chemo was messing with my head. That had to be it. But here's the thing about noticing something once, you can't unnotice it. It's like when someone points out that you can see your nose all the time, and suddenly that's all you can think about. Once I'd seen Mary smiling at her phone like that, I started seeing it everywhere. At breakfast, while I was trying to choke down oatmeal that tasted like sadness. During TV shows, where she'd be supposedly watching but actually just staring at her screen with this little smile playing at her lips. In bed at night, when she thought I was asleep, the glow of her phone illuminating her face in the dark like some kind of digital campfire. The real kicker, though, was the chemo sessions themselves. Mary had insisted from day one that she'd come with me to every single appointment. "I'm your wife," she'd said, squeezing my hand with what I thought was genuine love and support. "I'm going to be there for you through all of this. Every session, every moment." And she was there, technically. She'd drive me to the cancer center, walk me in holding my hand like we were some kind of poster couple for standing by your spouse through illness. She'd even take photos sometimes, candid shots of me in the waiting room, or awkward selfies of us together where I looked like death warmed over and she looked like she was about to ask to speak to the manager. I think she was building some kind of social media narrative. You know, the supportive wife standing by her sick husband, racking up those sympathy likes and "you're so strong" comments. But here's what actually happened during those sessions. She'd get me settled in my recliner of doom, make sure the nurses had everything they needed, ask me approximately one time if I was comfortable, and then announce that she'd be waiting in the lobby or grabbing a coffee or making some calls for work. Every single time, like clockwork. As soon as that four was in my arm and I was committed to sitting there for the next few hours, she was gone. The first time I actually saw what she was doing during my treatment, it was completely by accident. The chemo room I was in had these big windows that overlooked the parking lot. I guess so patients could stare outside and contemplate their mortality while poison dripped into their veins, or maybe just so the room didn't feel quite so much like a tomb. I'd been zoning out, watching the clouds, trying not to think about the cold liquid crawling through my system, when I spotted her. Mary, my wife, standing next to her car in the parking lot, phone pressed to her ear, laughing. Not just a polite chuckle or a small smile, but full-on, head thrown back, hand on her stomach laughing. The kind of laugh that makes your whole body shake. The kind of laugh I hadn't seen from her in months, maybe years. The kind of laugh that, honestly, I didn't even know she was still capable of. And there I was, 3 floors up, hooked up to a machine, getting pumped full of chemicals that made me feel like I'd been hit by a truck made of nausea, while my wife was having what appeared to be the time of her life in a hospital parking lot. The juxtaposition was almost funny. Almost. If it wasn't so deeply, profoundly sad. I watched her for a few minutes. This woman I'd married. This person I thought I knew. She paced back and forth next to her car, still talking, still smiling. At one point, she did this thing where she tucked her hair behind her ear. That little gesture she always did when she was flirting. I knew that gesture intimately. She'd done it on our first date, outside that Italian restaurant downtown. She'd done it at our wedding when I'd told her she looked beautiful. And now she was doing it while I was upstairs, literally marinating in chemicals that could probably strip paint off a car. "Everything okay?" Linda asked, and I realized I'd been staring out that window for way too long. "Yeah," I lied, pulling my eyes away from the parking lot. Just watching the world go by. But I wasn't okay. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut, that instinct that tells you when something's off, when the picture you're seeing doesn't match the story you're being told. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself she was just stressed, just blowing off steam, just dealing with the pressure of having a sick husband in the only way she knew how. After all, she was married to a man whose current hairstyle could best be described as recently peeled kiwi fruit, or possibly molting baby bird. Who could blame her for needing to laugh? But deep down, in that place where you know things before you're ready to admit you know them, I knew. Something was very, very wrong. By the time my next chemo session rolled around, I'd made a decision. I was going to figure out what the hell was going on with my wife, even if it killed me. Which, let's be honest, seemed increasingly likely given that I was already fighting cancer and now apparently needed to add amateur detective work to my list of stressful activities. But whatever. If Sherlock Holmes could solve mysteries while being a functional drug addict, I could figure out my wife's weird behavior while being pumped full of chemicals. How hard could it be? I had a plan. Well, plan is maybe too generous a word. I had an intention, a vibe, a general sense that I was going to observe things more carefully and hopefully not look like a complete psycho in the process. I was going to be cool about it. Casual. Like one of those detectives in the movies who notices everything but acts like they're barely paying attention. Except, bolder and sicker and hooked up to medical equipment. But other than those minor details, I was basically going to be James Bond. The session started like they all did. Me shuffling into the cancer center like an extra from a zombie movie. Mary walking beside me with her hand on my arm in that performative way that probably looked supportive to outsiders, but felt increasingly hollow to me. She was wearing her cancer center outfit, these perfectly coordinated athleisure pieces that suggested she might hit the gym after watching her husband get poisoned. Leggings, a designer hoodie, those expensive sneakers that cost more than my first car. She looked like she was ready for a photo shoot for Hot Wives of Cancer Patients Monthly. Is that a magazine? It should be. Someone's definitely making money off inspirational illness content. We checked in at the front desk, where the receptionist, Gloria, gave me her usual sad smile. I'd started to recognize all the regulars here, the staff, the other patients, even the guy who delivered supplies every Tuesday afternoon. It's weird how quickly a cancer center becomes familiar territory, like your least favorite bar that you keep going back to because it's close to your house, and they know your order. Except instead of ordering a beer, you're ordering poison, and instead of a hangover, you get existential dread and mouth sores. Room 3 today, sweetie, Gloria said, handing me the little buzzer thing that would alert me when my recliner of doom was ready. I pocketed it and headed to the waiting room with Mary trailing behind me, her phone already out and glowing in her hand like some kind of digital security blanket. We sat down in those uncomfortable chairs that all medical waiting rooms seem to buy in bulk from the same supplier of furniture designed to make you feel worse. Mary immediately started scrolling, her thumb moving in that practiced, rhythmic way that suggested she was deep in a conversation. Or multiple conversations. Who knows? Maybe she was running some kind of texting empire I didn't know about. I pretended to read a magazine, some ancient copy of People from 2019 that had celebrities on the cover I barely recognized. But really, I was watching her. And let me tell you, once you start actually paying attention to someone's phone behavior, it becomes glaringly, painfully obvious when they're hiding something. It's like watching a bad poker player who thinks they're being subtle, but is actually broadcasting their every tell to the entire table. Her phone buzzed. Not the little vibration of a regular text, but that longer buzz that meant someone was really trying to get her attention. Maybe multiple messages in a row. Mary's eyes lit up, actually lit up, like someone had flipped a switch behind her eyeballs, and she pulled the phone closer to her face. Then, and this is the part that really got me, she tilted the screen away. Physically angled it so that I couldn't see what she was reading, even though I was sitting right next to her and pretending to care about which celebrity had gotten divorced in 2019. Everything okay? I asked, keeping my voice light and casual, like I was just making conversation and not like I was internally screaming. Oh, yeah, she said, not looking up from her phone. Just spam. Spam. Right. Because spam messages definitely make you smile like that. Because telemarketers have really upped their game and are now sending texts so entertaining that you need to hide them from your cancer-stricken husband. Because that makes total sense in any universe where logic exists. Spam with heart emojis? I asked, because I caught a glimpse before she tilted the phone away. Just a flash of that familiar pink heart emoji, but it was enough. She laughed, this weird, forced little laugh that sounded like she'd just remembered she was supposed to find something funny. You know how it is. These scammers are getting creative. Probably trying to catfish old people or something. Old people. Right. Because at 42, Mary was definitely the target demographic for elderly romance scams. Sure, that tracked. I nodded and went back to my magazine, pretending to be engrossed in an article about someone's beach body transformation while my actual body was actively falling apart. The buzzer went off a few minutes later, saving me from having to continue pretending everything was normal. We headed back to room 3, where Linda was already setting up my station with the efficiency of a pit crew preparing for a race. She gave me a knowing look as I settled into the chair. Had her eyes always been that observant, or was I just noticing it now? "Mary, you can head out if you need to," Linda said, not unkindly, but not exactly warmly either. "This is going to be a long session today. 3 hours at least." "Oh, I was actually going to grab a coffee," Mary said, already halfway to the door. "The cafeteria coffee here is terrible, so I might run to that Starbucks down the street." "You want anything, honey?" "Honey." She called me honey. When had that started sounding so empty? Like calling someone buddy or pal. Words that create distance while pretending to be affectionate. "I'm good," I said, because what was I going to say? "Yeah. Can you grab me a Venti latte while you're out texting your mysterious spam sender?" That seemed counterproductive to my whole cool detective vibe. She kissed the top of my head. Another one of those quick, obligatory pecks, and disappeared through the door so fast she might have actually teleported. I watched her go, then immediately turned my attention to the window. Room 3 had an even better view of the parking lot than my last room. It was like the universe was helping me out, providing prime surveillance real estate. Linda started hooking up my 4, and I could feel her watching me watch the window. "Looking for something?" she asked. "Just enjoying the view," I said. Nothing says peaceful healing environment like a parking lot in October. Mum. She didn't sound convinced. And then I saw them. Mary had emerged from the building and was walking across the parking lot. But she wasn't heading toward her car. Instead, she was making a beeline for the picnic area near the emergency room entrance. You know, that sad little spot with 2 benches and a struggling tree where people go to smoke or cry or contemplate their life choices. And standing there, leaning against said struggling tree like he was posing for the cover of Medical Professional Quarterly, was a guy in scrubs. Not just any guy in scrubs. This dude looked like he'd been created in a lab specifically to make married, balding cancer patients feel inadequate. Tall, probably 6'2", 6'3". Dark hair that was perfectly styled in that "I woke up like this, but actually spent 20 minutes on it" way. And even from 3 floors up, I could see his teeth when he smiled at Mary. They were so white they probably glowed in the dark. I immediately nicknamed him Dr. McSmirk because he had that kind of face. The kind that suggested he knew exactly how good-looking he was and had built his entire personality around it. Mary reached him, and they didn't hug or anything. Nothing that obvious. But there was something about their body language that made my stomach drop. The way she stood just a little too close. The way he leaned in when he talked. The way she laughed and did that hair-tucking thing again. That goddamn hair-tucking thing. "First time?" Linda asked quietly, and I realized she'd been standing next to me. Also looking out the window, also watching my wife flirt with some Ken doll in the hospital parking lot. "No," I said, my voice coming out more bitter than I'd intended. "Second. Same circus, different clowns." Linda made a small noise that might have been agreement or sympathy or both. She adjusted my 4 with practiced hands, her face carefully neutral in that way medical professionals perfect. The expression that says, "I'm not judging, but I'm definitely taking notes." "Your wife always come with you?" she asked after a moment. I barked out a laugh that had no humor in it whatsoever. "Yep, she loves it. Really brings us closer, you know? Nothing says, 'till death do us part,' like watching poison drip into my veins while she networks in the parking lot." Linda's face did something interesting then. It tightened. Her jaw clenched slightly, and her eyes narrowed in a way that suggested she was debating whether to say something or mind her own business. We stood there for a second, both watching my wife giggle at Dr. McSmirk like they were in some kind of romantic comedy, and I was just an inconvenient plot device. Linda finally said, which is nurse speak for, "I have opinions, but I'm professionally obligated to keep them to myself." Then she added, "I bet." And somehow, those 2 words, "I bet," carried more meaning than an entire conversation. They said, "I see what you see. I know what you know. And honey, this is worse than you think. So here's something I learned about hospitals. They're basically small towns where everyone knows everyone else's business. Except instead of gossiping at the local diner, they're gossiping at the nurse's station while someone codes in room 7. And Linda? Linda was apparently the mayor of this particular small town, the keeper of secrets, the witness to every drama that had ever unfolded in this building's parking lot, hallways, and uncomfortably intimate examination rooms. She'd been working at this cancer center for something like 20 years, which meant she'd seen literally thousands of patients come through. And apparently, she'd also seen their spouses do some truly spectacular things while those patients were busy trying not to die. The chemo dripped into my veins with its usual cold, creeping sensation, and I tried to focus on literally anything other than what I'd just witnessed through the window. Mary and Dr. McSmirk had finished their little parking lot rendezvous and gone their separate ways, her to supposedly get coffee, and back into the building to presumably do whatever overly attractive medical professionals do when they're not flirting with patients' wives. I felt nauseous, and for once, it had nothing to do with the chemicals currently coursing through my bloodstream. Linda busied herself with checking my vitals, adjusting my blanket, doing all the standard nurse things, but I could tell she was working up to something. She had that look people get when they're debating whether to mind their own business or blow up someone else's life with information they probably shouldn't share but feel morally obligated to anyway. It's the same look your friend gets right before they tell you that yes, those jeans do make you look fat, and no, your new haircut is not working for you. So, I said, because the silence was killing me and I figured I might as well open the door for whatever bomb she was clearly preparing to drop. You seem like you have something on your mind, Linda. And before you say it's just concern about my white blood cell count, I'm going to call bullshit. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw about 17 different emotions flicker across her face. Finally, she pulled up one of those rolling stools and sat down next to my recliner, which is how you know a conversation is about to get real. Medical professionals only sit down when they're about to deliver news that requires you to be in a stable position, either physically or emotionally. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, she started, which is never, ever a good way to begin a sentence. Nothing good has ever followed those words in the history of human communication. You're already fighting enough. The last thing you need is more stress. Linda, I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was doing this weird tap dancing thing in my chest. I'm going to be real with you. I'm currently being injected with liquid that's essentially killing parts of me in the hope that it kills the cancer faster than it kills everything else. My stress levels are already at existential crisis levels. Whatever you're about to tell me literally cannot make my situation worse. Famous last words, right? Never tell the universe that things can't get worse. The universe takes that as a personal challenge. Linda sighed, and it was the kind of sigh that carried the weight of witnessing too much human bullshit over too many years. Your wife, she said carefully, isn't just grabbing coffee during your sessions. Yeah, I kind of figured that out when I saw her practically slow dancing with Dr. McDreamy down there in the parking lot. I said, so what, they're friends? She's networking? She's suddenly developed a passionate interest in whatever medical specialty Mr. Perfect Teeth specializes in. His name is Dr. Marcus Chun, Linda said, and I noticed she didn't use the same warm tone she used when talking about literally anyone else. He's a resident. Internal medicine, and he's been here about 6 months. 6 months. I've been doing chemo for 8 weeks. The math was not mathing in a way that made me feel any better about this situation. Linda continued, her voice low enough that the other patients and nurses couldn't hear. I've seen them together before. Multiple times. At first, I thought maybe they were just friendly. You know, she's here a lot. He works here, people talk. But then I started noticing the pattern. Pattern, I repeated, because apparently my vocabulary had shrunk to just repeating the last word of whatever horrifying thing someone said to me. Cool. Great coping mechanism, brain. Every time you have a session, she's down there with him. Sometimes in the parking lot, sometimes in the cafeteria. Once I saw them in the staff lounge, which, by the way, spouses aren't supposed to be in. Linda's jaw tightened. Last week, I had to drop some paperwork off at the administration building during my lunch break. I saw them in the parking garage. Level 3, near the back. And they weren't just talking. My stomach did a flip that had nothing to do with nausea and everything to do with the crushing realization that my worst suspicions were probably not suspicious enough. Define weren't just talking, I said, even though I really didn't want to know the answer. They weren't kissing, Linda said quickly, probably seeing the look on my face. But I've been married for 40 years. I know body language. I know what it looks like when two people want to be closer than they currently are. She was touching his arm. He was leaning in close, saying something that made her laugh. And the way they were looking at each other. She trailed off, shaking her head. Look, I'm not trying to ruin your life here. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe they really are just friends, and I'm a cynical old woman who's seen too many bad marriages implode in this building. But you don't think so? I said flatly. No, she admitted. I don't think so. We sat there for a minute, the steady beep of the 4 machine counting off seconds of my increasingly complicated life. Around us, the chemo room continued its depressing routine. Someone's machine beeped an alert. A nurse rushed over to fix it. The guy with the Tom Clancy novel got up to use the bathroom, his 4-pole rolling along beside him like a really unhelpful robot companion. Life went on, completely indifferent to the fact that mine was actively falling apart. There's more, Linda said, and Jesus Christ, how could there possibly be more? I wasn't going to say anything because, like I said, you've got enough to deal with. But a few weeks ago, I overheard her on the phone. She was in the family waiting room, and I was in the hallway. She didn't know I was there. And I prompted, even though every instinct I had was screaming at me to tell her to stop, to not finish that sentence, to let me live in blissful ignorance for just a little bit longer. She was telling someone, I assume him, that you were getting worse. That the treatment wasn't working as well as the doctors hoped. Linda's face was grim. The thing is, your treatment is working. Your last scan showed improvement. Your oncologist told you that himself. I was there when Dr. Patel went over your results. The world tilted slightly, and for a second, I thought maybe I was having a reaction to the chemo. But no, this was just what betrayal felt like when it really, truly sank in. This wasn't just an affair, although that would have been bad enough. Thank you very much. This was something worse. This was my wife actively lying about my medical condition to her. What? Boyfriend? Side piece? Future husband? Why would she lie about that? I asked, but I already knew the answer. I just didn't want to believe it. Linda looked at me with such profound sadness that I almost started crying right there in my stupid recliner. Honey, she said gently, I think she's trying to convince everyone, including you, that you're not going to make it. That way, when she moves on, people won't judge her as harshly. She's building a narrative. Fantastic. My wife was starring in her own personal tragedy where I was the conveniently dying husband who would garner her sympathy points and a clean exit from our marriage. She was probably already planning her widow era, picking out the perfect black dress that would make her look simultaneously devastated and attractive at my funeral. Maybe Dr. Chun would comfort her. Maybe they'd wait a respectful 6 months before going public with their relationship. Maybe everyone would say how brave she was, how strong, how wonderful that she found love again after such a terrible loss. Except I wasn't planning on dying. Plot twist, Mary. So what you're telling me, I said slowly, is that my wife is having an affair with a doctor, lying about my prognosis, and essentially setting the stage for me to die so she can move on guilt-free. I'm telling you what I've observed, Linda said carefully. What you do with that information is up to you. But yes, that's what it looks like to me. I sat there, poison dripping into my arm, betrayal sitting heavy in my chest, and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with this information. My wife, the woman I'd married, the woman who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, was apparently rooting for the cancer. She was Team Tumor. She'd picked her side in this fight, and it wasn't mine. Well, I finally said, because sometimes when your life is a complete dumpster fire, all you can do is make jokes about the flames. This is just fantastic. Really adds a nice layer of complexity to the whole fighting for my life thing. Now I'm fighting my own body and my marriage. It's like a 2-for-1 special on personal disasters. Linda didn't laugh, but she did squeeze my hand. You deserve better, she said simply. You deserve to live, and you deserve to know the truth. And you know what? She was right. I did deserve better. I deserved a wife who wasn't measuring me for a coffin while I was still breathing. I deserved to fight this cancer without wondering if my own spouse was secretly hoping I'd lose. The rage started then, building slowly in my chest like a pilot light finally catching. It mixed with the chemo and the betrayal and the sheer audacity of what Mary was doing, and somewhere in that toxic cocktail, I found something useful: motivation. Pure, undiluted, spite-fueled motivation. If Mary thought I was going to die quietly and give her the perfect tragic backstory for her romance with Dr. Perfect Teeth, she had another thing coming. I was going to survive this. I was going to beat this cancer. And then I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person she really was. Linda wasn't done dropping truth bombs on me. Of course she wasn't. Because apparently, when you're already at rock bottom, the universe just hands you a shovel and says, "Keep digging, buddy. There's a whole new level of hell down here you haven't discovered yet." She sat there on her rolling stool, looking at me with those sharp, all-knowing eyes, and I could tell there was more. There's always more. It's like those infomercials. But wait, there's more. Except instead of a free set of steak knives, you get devastating information about your spouse's betrayal. "There's something else," Linda said, and I swear to God, I almost laughed. Of course there was something else. Why would there not be something else? At this point, I was half expecting her to tell me that Mary had taken out a life insurance policy on me or had already picked out my burial plot. Maybe she'd registered for gifts for my funeral. "In lieu of flowers, please send gift cards to Sephora." "Hit me," I said, gesturing dramatically with my free arm, the one that wasn't currently tethered to an 4-pole. At this point, what's one more revelation? Tell me she's secretly a serial killer. Tell me she's been putting antifreeze in my oatmeal. Tell me she's actually my long-lost twin sister, and our entire marriage is illegal. I can take it. Linda didn't smile. This was serious. This was the kind of serious that makes nurses who've seen everything look genuinely worried. "Has your wife been suggesting alternative treatments? Asking you to maybe skip sessions? Talking about natural remedies or holistic approaches?" And just like that, my brain did one of those movie montage things where everything suddenly clicks into place. You know, when the detective finally figures out who done it, and all the clues flash through their mind in rapid succession while dramatic music plays. Except there was no dramatic music, just the steady beep of my machine and the distant sound of someone coughing in another recliner. The blogs. Oh my God, the blogs. For the past 2 weeks, Mary had been sending me articles. Lots of articles. They'd ping into my phone at random times with messages like, "Thought you might find this interesting," or just some food for thought. They were all from these websites with names like Natural Healing Journey and Holistic Cancer Warriors and Chemo-Free Victory Stories. The kind of sites that look like they were designed in 2003 by someone who'd just discovered word art and thought Comic Sans was a valid font choice. The articles all had the same basic message. Chemotherapy is poison. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. Doctors don't want you to know about natural alternatives. Conspiracy theories, my favorite. And you can cure cancer with positive thinking and the right combination of supplements. Some of them recommended coffee enemas. I wish I was joking. Coffee enemas. Because apparently, when you're fighting for your life, what you really need is to put Starbucks where Starbucks should never, ever go. At the time, I thought Mary was just grasping at straws, looking for hope in weird places, because watching your spouse go through cancer treatment is scary, and people do strange things when they're scared. I'd even felt kind of bad for her, thinking she was so desperate to help me that she'd fallen down some alternative medicine rabbit hole on the internet. But now, with Linda's question hanging in the air and my brain finally connecting the dots, I realized what was actually happening. Mary wasn't trying to help me. She was trying to kill me. Or at least, she was trying to convince me to stop doing the thing that might actually save my life. "The smoothies," I said out loud, and Linda's face confirmed that yes, I was on the right track. "She's been making me these green smoothie things. Said they were packed with antioxidants and would help with the side effects. They tasted like someone had blended a lawn with sadness and maybe a hint of banana. I'd been choking them down every morning like a good patient, thinking my wife was being supportive and health conscious. Thinking she cared. What was in them?" Linda asked carefully. "Hell if I know. Kale, probably. Spinach. Some kind of powder that she said was medicinal mushrooms. Chia seeds. Maybe the tears of organic farmers. She wouldn't let me see her make them. Said she wanted it to be her special thing, her way of taking care of me." I felt sick, and this time it definitely wasn't the chemo. She was trying to get me to replace actual medicine with what? Blended vegetables and wishful thinking. Linda nodded slowly. "There's nothing wrong with smoothies as a supplement. But if she was suggesting you skip chemo sessions or reduce your dosage in favor of alternative treatments, I interrupted, because now that I was thinking about it, really thinking about it, I could remember at least 3 separate conversations where Mary had gently, carefully suggested that maybe I was pushing too hard. Maybe my body needed a break. Maybe the doctors were being too aggressive with the treatment. She kept saying things like, "You know your body best," and "maybe you should trust your intuition," and Western medicine doesn't have all the answers. "And let me guess," Linda said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "She was real concerned about your quality of life, talking about how you should enjoy whatever time you have left instead of spending it sick from treatment." "Oh my God," I breathed. She was trying to kill me with kale. It would have been funny if it wasn't so absolutely, horrifically true. My wife, the woman I'd shared a bed with for years, the woman who knew how I took my coffee and which side of the bed I preferred, and that I was irrationally afraid of birds, was actively trying to sabotage my cancer treatment so she could what? Run off with Dr. McDreamy without the pesky complication of a living husband? "That's great," I said, and I could hear the hysteria creeping into my voice. "That's just fantastic. She's trying to murder me, but organically, with superfoods. That's so much better than regular murder. Very on-brand for 2025. How did he die?" "Oh, his wife convinced him to treat stage 3 cancer with acai berries and positive affirmations." Linda reached over and adjusted something on my fore, probably increasing the flow rate or maybe just giving herself something to do with her hands because this conversation was approximately as comfortable as sitting on a cactus. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know this is a lot to process." A lot to process. That was putting it mildly. That was like calling the Titanic a slight boating mishap or describing World War II as a minor international disagreement. This wasn't a lot to process. This was a complete dismantling of my entire reality while I was simultaneously trying not to die from the disease that my wife was apparently rooting for. "So let me get this straight," I said, counting off on my fingers because somehow making a list made this feel slightly more manageable, even though it absolutely did not. "My wife is having an affair with a doctor. She's lying to people about my prognosis. She's trying to convince me to skip the treatments that might actually save my life. And she's doing all of this so she can what? Move on to her new relationship without the social stigma of leaving her sick husband." "That's what it looks like to me," Linda confirmed. "I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But based on what I've seen and heard over the past few weeks." She trailed off, shaking her head. I stared at the 4 bag hanging above me, watching the clear liquid make its slow journey through the tube and into my arm. This stuff was literally poison. It made me feel like death. It had caused my hair to fall out, my appetite to disappear, my energy levels to plummet to somewhere below reanimated corpse. I'd spent nights hugging the toilet, mornings too weak to get out of bed, afternoons wondering if this was really worth it. And I'd done it all thinking my wife was in my corner, thinking she was supporting me, thinking we were fighting this thing together. "She's rooting for the cancer," I said out loud, testing how the words sounded. They sounded insane. They also sounded true. "My wife is Team Tumor. She's picked sides in this fight, and spoiler alert, it's not my side." "I think so," Linda said softly. "And I think you deserve to know that. You deserve to make informed decisions about your treatment without someone you trust working against you." Working against me. That was one way to put it. Actively trying to hasten my death was another, slightly more accurate way. Because let's be real, that's what this was. Mary wasn't just being unsupportive or checked out or dealing with her own fears poorly. She was actively, deliberately trying to convince me to stop the treatment that might save my life. She was giving me false hope about alternatives that wouldn't do shit. She was building a narrative where I died, and she got to play the tragic widow before riding off into the sunset with her doctor boyfriend. The rage that had started earlier, that little pilot light of anger, suddenly roared into a full-blown inferno. It burned through the nausea, through the exhaustion, through every single side effect the chemo was currently causing. This was pure, concentrated fury, and honestly, it felt better than anything I'd felt in weeks. "You know what?" I said, sitting up straighter in my recliner. "Screw that. Screw her. Screw Dr. Perfect Teeth. Screw the organic smoothies and the alternative medicine blogs and the whole tragic dying husband narrative she's been building." Linda raised an eyebrow. Yeah. I confirmed. If Mary thinks I'm going to die quietly and give her the perfect backstory for her new relationship, she's got another thing coming. I'm going to survive this. I'm going to beat this cancer. And then I'm going to make damn sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person she really is. That's the spirit, Linda said. And for the first time since this conversation started, she smiled. Get mad. Stay mad. Use it. Oh, I'm using it, I assured her. I'm going to turn spite into medicine. I'm going to be fueled by pure, undiluted rage and the burning desire to prove her wrong. Move over, chemo. We've got a new treatment plan, and it's called Living Well is the Best Revenge. Linda laughed, actually laughed, and patted my arm. I've seen a lot of patients over the years, she said. The ones who survive, they're the ones who have something to fight for. Or in your case, something to fight against. Then consider me the most motivated patient you've ever had, I said. Because I've got a lot to fight against right now, and I'll be damned if I let cancer or my terrible wife win. There's a specific moment in every adult's life when you realize that no matter how old you get, no matter how independent you become, there are some situations that can only be solved by going home to your mother. This was one of those situations. When you've been betrayed by your wife, poisoned by medical science, and generally had your entire existence turned into a country song, there's really only one place to go. The house where someone still has baby photos of you on the wall and will defend you to the death, no questions asked. I left the cancer center that day feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, run over by a train, and then backed over by the truck again just to make sure the job was done properly. Linda had given me a long hug before I left, the kind of hug that says, I'm sorry your life is a dumpster fire, but I believe you're going to make it through, and slipped me a piece of paper with her personal cell phone number on it. If you need anything, she'd said, or if you just need to talk to someone who knows the truth. I'd pocketed it like it was classified information, which, in a way, it was. I'd texted Mary some bullshit excuse about feeling sick and needing to go straight to my mom's house instead of home. She'd responded with a thumbs up emoji. A thumbs up. Not even feel better, honey. Or, do you need me to come with you? Just a thumbs up, like I'd asked if she wanted extra guacamole on her burrito. That thumbs up told me everything I needed to know about where her priorities were. The drive to my mom's house took about 30 minutes, which gave me plenty of time to practice how I was going to explain this situation. Hey mom, so funny story. My wife is trying to kill me with wellness culture, and she's sleeping with the doctor. No, that wasn't right. Mom, remember how you never really liked Mary? Turns out your maternal instincts were spot on. Still not quite landing. By the time I pulled into her driveway, I'd given up on finding the right words and decided to just word vomit the whole situation and let her make sense of it. My mother, Patricia Reynolds, is 5'3" of pure maternal fury wrapped in cardigans and disappointment. She's the kind of woman who bakes cookies for church fundraisers and intimidates grown men at PTA meetings. She taught middle school English for 35 years, which means she's seen every possible version of human stupidity and is completely unimpressed by all of it. If there was a war, you'd want my mother on your side. If there was a zombie apocalypse, she'd probably organize the zombies into an efficient system and have them doing her yard work within a week. She opened the door before I could even knock. She'd been watching through the window, because mothers have some kind of sixth sense about their children showing up unannounced looking like death warmed over. And her face immediately shifted from pleased surprise to concerned mother bear. What did that woman do? She asked. Not, hi honey, good to see you. Or come in, let me get you some tea. Just straight to the accusation. Because my mother had never really liked Mary, not in that obvious way where she said mean things, but in that subtle way where she'd purse her lips whenever Mary talked about her career or made comments about redecorating my childhood bedroom. Mothers know. They always know. I walked inside, collapsed onto the floral couch that had been in the same spot since 1987, and just started talking. Everything poured out. The affair, Dr. McSmirk, Mom loved that nickname, I could tell. The lies about my prognosis, the alternative medicine blogs, the organic death smoothies, all of it. I told her about Linda, about watching Mary in the parking lot, about the realization that my own wife was essentially rooting for me to die so she could upgrade to a newer model without the social consequences. My mother listened to the entire story without interrupting, which is how I knew this was serious. When Mom goes quiet, that's not a good sign. That's the calm before the Category 5 hurricane. Her face progressed through about 17 different shades of red, starting at mild sunburn and ending somewhere around, about to spontaneously combust. By the time I finished talking, I was pretty sure I could see steam coming out of her ears. That absolute witch, Mom said. And let me tell you, when my mother calls someone a witch, she's not using the W word she really wants to use. She was holding back for my benefit, which was both touching and slightly terrifying. That manipulative, heartless, conniving little witch. Her nostrils were flaring. I'd seen that nostril flare before. It's what happened right before she called my high school principal and got him to reverse an unjust suspension, and again when she made a furniture store manager cry after they tried to scam her on a warranty. The nostril flare was not to be trifled with. If nostril flaring was an Olympic sport, my mother would have gold medals from multiple consecutive games. I never liked her, Mom announced, which was not news to anyone. From the moment you brought her home, I knew something was off. She had dead eyes, like a shark, or a politician. But did you listen to me? No, you were in love. She said in love, like it was a disease I'd contracted from poor hygiene. To be fair, Mom, you think everyone I date has something wrong with them. Because they do. Your taste in women is terrible. Remember Jessica from college? The one who borrowed your credit card? Or Amanda, the one who joined that weird cult that worshipped crystals? Or, okay, I get it. My track record isn't great. I held up my hands in surrender. But this is kind of next level, don't you think? Like, we've graduated from bad girlfriend to potential murderer. Mom got up and started pacing, which is never a good sign. When Patricia Reynolds starts pacing, someone's about to get destroyed, and that someone was definitely not going to be me. We're calling a lawyer, she declared. Tomorrow. First thing. And you're staying here. I don't want you in that house with that woman. Mom, I have stuff there. Clothes, my laptop, We'll get it later. With a police escort if necessary. Right now, you need to be somewhere safe, and you need to focus on getting better. She pointed at me with the kind of authority that made me feel 12 years old again. Your only job is to beat this cancer. Let me handle Mary. And honestly, that sounded like the best plan I'd heard in weeks. Let Mom handle it. Let Mom's righteous fury and middle school teacher-honed intimidation skills deal with my cheating, would-be murdering wife. I was tired. I was sick. I was emotionally destroyed. Tag me out, Mom. You're in. We ordered Chinese food, Mom's answer to every crisis, apparently, and I was halfway through some lo mein that actually tasted good for the first time in weeks when we heard it. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway way too fast, followed by a car door slamming, followed by aggressive footsteps on the front walkway. Mary, Mom and I looked at each other. Did you tell her you were here? Mom asked. I said I was coming here because I felt sick. I didn't think she'd actually show up. Well, she's here now, Mom said, standing up with the kind of determined energy that suggested she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. Stay inside. Let me handle this. She walked to the front door, and I followed because there was no way in hell I was missing this confrontation. Mom opened the door just as Mary was about to ring the bell, and the two women faced each other like gunslingers in an Old West showdown, except one of them was 5'3" and wearing a cardigan with embroidered cats on it. I need to see my husband, Mary demanded, trying to look around Mom and into the house. He's sick. He needs me. What he needs, Mom said, her voice so cold it could have frozen hell over, is for you to leave him alone. Excuse me? He's my husband. He needs his wife. He needs a restraining order, Mom corrected. And if you don't get off my property in the next 10 seconds, he's going to get one. Mary's face did something interesting. This rapid progression from fake concern to genuine anger to calculation. She was trying to figure out what I'd told my mother, how much Mom knew, whether she could salvage this situation. I don't know what he's told you, Patricia, but... Oh, he told me everything, sweetie, Mom said. And the way she said sweetie could have stripped paint. About your friend the doctor. About the lies. About trying to convince my son to stop the treatment that might save his life. Should I continue, or would you like to leave now under your own power? Mary's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's not. I would never. Save it. Mom crossed her arms. I taught teenagers for 35 years. I know what lying looks like, and honey, you're not even good at it. This is ridiculous. I love him. I'm trying to help him. You love him. Mom's voice rose, And I watched Mary actually take a step back. You love him so much you're cheating on him while he's getting chemotherapy? You love him so much you're lying about how well his treatment is working? That's a funny definition of love you've got there. Mary tried one more time. You don't understand. The stress, the pressure, watching him go through this. Oh, I understand perfectly, Mom said. You're a selfish, heartless woman who decided her dying husband was too inconvenient. So you found a replacement and started setting the stage for him to die. Well, guess what? He's not dying. He's going to beat this. And when he does, everyone's going to know exactly what you are. You can't. I can and I will. Now get off my property before I call the cops. Or better yet, before I call your mother. The threat of calling her mother was apparently the final straw. Mary turned on her heel and stormed back to her car, and I watched through the window as she peeled out of the driveway fast enough to leave skid marks. Mom closed the door, turned to look at me, and said, "That woman is terrible. You're definitely getting a divorce." Yeah, I agreed. Yeah, I think I am. The first night at Mom's house, I did what any emotionally devastated adult man would do. I cried like a baby, ate an entire pint of ice cream that I immediately threw up. Thanks, chemo. And then spent approximately 3 hours Googling various combinations of how to make your ex regret breathing and best legal revenge tactics and can spike cure cancer. The internet, as always, was both helpful and completely unhinged. There were forum posts from people suggesting everything from hiring skywriters to spell out your ex's sins to the more practical advice of living well is the best revenge, which seemed boring but probably wouldn't land me in jail. Mom had set me up in my childhood bedroom, which she'd converted into a guest room sometime in the early 2000s, but still had traces of my teenage years lurking in the corners. My high school football trophy gathering dust on the bookshelf. A poster of some band I'd thought was cool in 1999. The same twin bed I'd slept in until I went to college, now with different sheets, but somehow still smelling vaguely like teenage angst and cheap cologne. It was weirdly comforting being back in this room, like I'd time traveled to a point where my biggest problem was whether Jessica Morrison would go to prom with me, not whether my wife was actively trying to speed up my death. I woke up the next morning feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, standard post-chemo experience, but with something new burning in my chest. It wasn't heartburn from Mom's spicy lo mein, and it wasn't the usual nausea. It was anger, pure, concentrated, high-octane rage that felt surprisingly energizing. I'd spent weeks feeling sorry for myself, feeling weak and sick and pathetic, letting Mary's fake sympathy and toxic smoothies drag me down. But now I was pissed off, and you know what? Being pissed off felt way better than being sad. I shuffled into the kitchen where Mom was making pancakes. Actual pancakes, not some kale-infused abomination masquerading as breakfast, and she took one look at my face and smiled. "There he is," she said. "There's my fighter. I'm going to destroy her," I announced, pouring myself coffee that was blessedly normal and not secretly trying to kill me. Not literally, legally, but thoroughly. "That's my boy," Mom said proudly, like I'd just told her I made the honor roll. "Eat your pancakes. You need your strength for revenge." That became my new motto, basically. You need your strength for revenge. It was surprisingly motivating. Every time I felt like giving up, every time the chemo made me feel like death incarnate, every time I wanted to just stay in bed and let the universe win, I'd think about Mary and Dr. McSmirk laughing in that parking lot, and suddenly I'd find the energy to get up and fight. Spite, I discovered, is incredibly medicinal. They should bottle it. Spite, now available in capsule form. Side effects may include outliving your enemies. My next chemo session rolled around, and I showed up with a completely different attitude. I'd spent the weekend ordering stuff online with what was technically still joint account money. Mary's money too, which made it even more satisfying. I got wireless headphones, the expensive kind that noise cancel everything including existential dread. A portable phone charger. Snacks that didn't taste like cardboard and sadness. And the piece de resistance. A custom hoodie from one of those print-on-demand websites that said "Still alive. Sorry to disappoint you," in bold letters across the chest. I walked into the cancer center wearing that hoodie, carrying a backpack full of supplies like I was preparing for a camping trip instead of getting pumped full of poison, and I swear to God every nurse who saw me did a double take. Linda spotted me from across the waiting room and literally laughed out loud. which in the normally somber atmosphere of a cancer center waiting room was like setting off a joy bomb. "Look at you," she said, grinning as she checked me in. "Someone's feeling better. Someone's feeling motivated." I corrected. "Turns out nothing cures depression quite like weaponized spite." She glanced at my hoodie and shook her head, still smiling. "You're going to be a legend around here. We've had patients with positive attitudes, but you're the first one I've seen turn pure sass into a treatment plan." "I'm pioneering a new therapeutic approach," I said. "It's called being too petty to die. I'm thinking of writing a book, maybe starting a podcast. Surviving cancer out of sheer stubbornness has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Linda got me settled in my usual recliner, room 3, with the good view of the parking lot where my wife used to commit her crimes against marriage, though she wouldn't be showing up today since I'd blocked her number and told her through a very curt email that I was handling treatment on my own from now on. The email had felt powerful. Very, "I don't need you anymore. I have my own life now," energy, even though my current life consisted of living in my childhood bedroom and letting my mother make me pancakes. Dr. Patel, my oncologist, stopped by during my infusion to check on me. Dr. Patel is this incredibly smart, incredibly kind Indian man in his 50s who always explains everything in terms that make sense and never talks down to you like some doctors do. He's the kind of doctor who actually listens when you talk, who remembers details about your life, who treats you like a human being instead of just a collection of symptoms and scan results. He noticed the hoodie immediately. "That's quite a statement," he said, and I couldn't tell if he was amused or concerned or both. "I'm feeling more optimistic, Doc," I said. "Turns out I've got a lot to live for." "Well, a lot to live for out of spite, but still. Counts, right?" Dr. Patel sat down on the stool next to my chair, and his face got that serious but gentle expression that doctors use when they want to have a real conversation. "Linda mentioned you've been going through some personal difficulties," he said carefully. "I'm sorry about that. The last thing anyone needs during cancer treatment is additional stress." "Oh, you have no idea, Doc," I said, adjusting my foreline. "You have absolutely no idea. Turns out nothing boosts motivation quite like finding out your wife's been rooting for the cancer. Really puts things in perspective. Suddenly, I'm not fighting for my life. I'm fighting to prove a point. And let me tell you, I'm extremely good at being petty when properly motivated." Dr. Patel's eyebrows went up. I'd never seen him look shocked before. I imagine when you're an oncologist, you develop a pretty solid poker face because you hear terrible things all day, every day, but that got him. "Your wife was—" "I'm sorry, what?" "Long story," I said. "Involves an affair with a doctor. Not you, thankfully. That would make this whole situation super awkward. And a conspiracy to get me to stop treatment using the power of kale and positive thinking. But don't worry, I'm out of that situation now. Living with my mom. Getting divorced. Living my best life, which currently involves getting injected with chemicals that make me vomit. But hey, at least nobody's secretly hoping I'll die anymore. Really raises the bar for relationship standards, you know?" "I see," Dr. Patel said slowly. "Well, I'm very sorry you're going through that. But I have to say, your attitude is remarkably improved from last session." "Rage is a hell of a motivator," I confirmed. "I'm channeling all my anger into staying alive. It's very productive. I'm like the Hulk, except instead of smashing things, I'm just aggressively surviving." Dr. Patel actually smiled at that. "Well, whatever works. And speaking of surviving, I have some good news for you." My heart did a weird skip thing. Good news? In a cancer center? Those two concepts rarely went together. Usually good news in this place meant the tumor didn't grow much, or your white blood cell count isn't terrible this week. "Your latest scan results came back," Dr. Patel continued, pulling up something on his tablet. "The tumors are shrinking. Significantly. Whatever you're doing, the treatment, the attitude change, the spite-fueled will to live, it's working. You're responding better than we initially hoped." I sat there for a second, my brain trying to process this information. The tumors were shrinking. My body was winning. The cancer was losing. Mary's evil plan had backfired so spectacularly that I was actually getting better instead of worse. "Are you serious?" I finally managed to say. "Like, actually serious? This isn't some, let's humor the cancer patient thing." "I'm completely serious," Dr. Patel assured me. "You're doing very well. If you continue responding like this, your prognosis is excellent." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. I was sitting in a chemo chair with poison dripping into my veins, wearing a sarcastic hoodie, and finding out that I was going to live. That despite my wife's best efforts to sabotage me with wellness culture and cheating doctor boyfriends, despite everything that had gone wrong, my body was fighting and winning. Spite is medicinal, I told Linda later, after Dr. Patel had moved on to his other patients. We should tell someone. Like, the medical community needs to know. Feeling tired during chemo? Try getting really, really angry. Studies show that being petty can shrink tumors. Linda laughed, that genuine, full-bodied laugh that made her whole face light up. If you beat this thing, and you will, you need to get a shirt that says "Fueled by Betrayal." I'll buy the coffee mug too, I said. Maybe start an entire line of spite-based merchandise. Living well is the best revenge, tote bags. Still here, still thriving water bottles. Outlived my ex's expectations bumper stickers. I'd buy all of it, Linda said. And you know what? So would I? 2 weeks later, I was feeling good enough to execute what Mom and I had started calling Operation Divorce Drop, which sounded way cooler than going to get my stuff from my cheating wife's house while she's busy screwing around. We'd been planning this mission like it was a heist movie. Timing, logistics, backup plans, the works. Mom had even drawn up a diagram on a legal pad showing the layout of the house and where my most important possessions were located, which was both incredibly helpful and slightly concerning because it suggested she'd done this kind of thing before. The chemo was still kicking my ass on a regular basis, don't get me wrong, but I was having more good days than bad days now. The tumors were shrinking, my energy was slowly returning, and most importantly, I could stay upright for more than 3 hours without needing a nap. Progress. Also, Spike continued to be an excellent motivator. Every time I felt tired or sick or just generally done with existence, I'd think about Mary and Dr. McSmirk assuming I'd be dead by now, and suddenly I'd find the energy to keep going. It's amazing what pure pettiness can do for your stamina. We'd done our reconnaissance work. Yes, I'm calling it reconnaissance because it sounds more official than stalking my wife's social media and calendar, and discovered that Mary had a standing hot yoga class every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Hot yoga. She'd never shown the slightest interest in yoga before, hot or otherwise. The woman once told me that sweating on purpose was against her religion. But apparently, when you're having an affair with a doctor, you suddenly discover a passion for downward dog and warrior pose. Or more likely, hot yoga was code for hotel room with McSmirk, which honestly made more sense given Mary's aversion to actual exercise. Tuesday afternoon rolled around, and Mom showed up at her house, my house, our house, the house I was about to liberate my belongings from, driving her sensible Honda CR-V like she was heading into battle. She dressed for the occasion in black yoga pants and a dark zip-up jacket, because apparently she decided we were doing this mission stealth style. I'd pointed out that showing up in broad daylight wasn't exactly covert ops, but she'd given me that look that said, "Let me have this," so I shut up and went with it. "You ready?" Mom asked as we pulled into the driveway. It was 6:15 p.m. Mary should be halfway through her yoga session by now, which meant we had at least an hour, probably more if the session included a post-workout protein shake at the hotel bar or whatever people having affairs did these days. "Ready as I'll ever be," I said, though honestly, walking back into the house I'd shared with Mary felt weird as hell. This was the place where we'd lived together, where we'd had dinners and arguments and lazy Sunday mornings, where I'd proposed to her in the kitchen because I couldn't wait until the fancy restaurant reservation I'd made, where we'd painted the living room together and fought about whether beige was a color or just the absence of design sense, as Mary had put it. Now I was breaking into my own house like a criminal to retrieve my stuff before my soon-to-be ex-wife could hide it, sell it, or burn it in some kind of ritualistic cleansing. I still had my key. Mary hadn't thought to ask for it back, probably because she assumed I'd be too sick or too broken or too dead to use it. Surprised, Mary. I slid the key into the lock, and we were in. The house looked exactly the same, which was somehow worse than if she'd changed everything. Same furniture, same paint colors, same photos on the wall, including our wedding photo, which felt like a sick joke. Look at us, so young and happy and stupid, having no idea that in a few years one of us would get cancer and the other would respond by having an affair and trying to commit passive-aggressive murder via alternative medicine. Okay, Mom said, pulling out her legal pad with the diagram. You get your clothes, important documents, electronics. I'll start boxing up anything else that's clearly yours. We've got an hour, maybe 90 minutes. In and out, quick and clean. We split up like a well-oiled machine. I headed upstairs to the bedroom, which felt surreal. This room where I'd slept next to Mary for years, where we'd had our lives intertwined in all those mundane, intimate ways that married people do. The bed was made perfectly, which was new. Mary had never been a make-the-bed person. She always said life was too short to make your bed every day when you were just going to mess it up again at night. But apparently, when you're trying to impress your doctor boyfriend, you suddenly develop an interest in hospital corners and decorative pillows. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and started throwing clothes into it. My favorite shirts, my comfortable jeans, my one good suit that I'd need for court appearances because yes, we were absolutely taking this to court. As I was packing, I noticed Mary's laptop sitting on her nightstand, plugged in and charging. She'd always been careless about logging out of things, a habit that used to drive me crazy when I'd borrow her computer and accidentally see all her open tabs. But now that carelessness was about to be her downfall. I opened the laptop. It woke up immediately, no password needed because she disabled that feature months ago claiming it was annoying. The screen showed her email, still logged in, messages sitting there like little bombs waiting to explode my life even further. Except my life was already pretty exploded, so really, this was just confirmation of things I already knew. But I clicked on the email anyway, because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment. The inbox was full of the usual stuff, promotional emails, work correspondence, messages from friends. But there, sitting in a folder labeled M, really subtle, Mary, excellent code name, were emails to and from Dr. Marcus Chun. Dozens of them, going back months. I started reading, and oh boy, it was worse than I'd imagined. Way worse. He's looking worse every week. One email from Mary read, dated about 3 weeks ago. The treatment is really taking a toll. The doctors say it could go either way. Soon we'll be free. Soon we'll be free. Like I was a prison sentence. Like my existence was something they were waiting to be liberated from. Wow, I muttered, staring at the screen. Romantic. Nothing says true love, like he's almost dead. Really sets the mood. Very Nicholas Sparks. The Notebook, but make it murder adjacent. I kept scrolling, my rage building with every message. There were discussions about where they'd go on vacation after. Plans for moving in together. Messages about how Mary couldn't wait to start her new life, and how Dr. Chin promised to take care of her in ways I apparently couldn't. There were even messages about how she was trying to convince me to stop treatment, complete with links to the bullshit alternative medicine blogs she'd been sending me. Found anything interesting? Mom appeared in the doorway, and I turned the laptop to show her. Her face went through several shades of red before settling on something close to purple. That absolute. She caught herself, took a deep breath, and said with forced calm, "We're forwarding all of this to the lawyer. Right now. Way ahead of you," I said, already pulling up my email and selecting all the messages in the M folder. I forwarded the entire conversation chain to myself. Then for good measure, downloaded them all to a USB drive I'd brought specifically for this purpose. Because I'd learned from enough legal dramas that you always get the evidence before it disappears. I also forwarded everything to Patricia Grant, the divorce lawyer Mom had found for me. Patricia was apparently some kind of legend in the local legal community, the Barracuda, they called her, which should tell you everything you need to know about her approach to divorce law. She'd taken my case immediately, probably because it was such a slam dunk that even a first-year law student could win it. Cheating wife tries to kill husband with kale while he's fighting cancer? Yeah, that's not going to play well in court. My phone rang almost immediately after I hit send. "Patricia, tell me you actually just sent me what I think you sent me," she said, skipping any greeting or pleasantries. "Emails from my wife to her boyfriend discussing my impending death and their future together?" I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I sent you." "Oh, this is gold," Patricia said, and she sounded genuinely excited, like a kid on Christmas morning. "This is absolute gold. We're going to take him, her, for everything. The house, the cars, the retirement accounts, everything. No judge in the country is going to side with her after seeing this." Music to my ears, I said. "How are you feeling?" Patricia asked, her tone shifting slightly. I mean, emotionally. This can't be easy to read. Honestly, I'm furious, but also weirdly relieved. Like, at least now I know I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. She really is exactly as terrible as I thought. I looked around the bedroom, at all the remnants of our life together. Plus, rage is keeping me alive at this point. My oncologist says I'm responding great to treatment, so apparently spite is medicinal. Patricia laughed. Well, keep being spiteful then, and keep collecting evidence. Anything else you can find, texts, photos, receipts, whatever. The more we have, the better. Will do, I promised. Mom and I spent the next hour systematically packing up everything that was mine. Clothes, books, my gaming console that Mary had always complained about, family photos, important documents. We even changed the locks while we were at it. Mom had called a locksmith earlier and had him meet us there. The guy took one look at my bald head and Mom's determined face and asked 0 questions. Just changed the locks and handed over the new keys. She's going to lose it when she realizes what we did, I said as we loaded the last box into Mom's car. Good, Mom said with satisfaction. Let her lose it. Let her call the cops if she wants. You have every right to be here, and we documented everything we took. She, meanwhile, is committing adultery and conspiracy to commit whatever trying to convince someone to stop medical treatment is called. Negligent homicide? I suggested. Aggressive wishful thinking? Asshole behavior in the first degree. All of the above, Mom agreed. As we pulled out of the driveway for the last time, I looked back at the house in the rearview mirror. That chapter of my life was over. Done. Finished. And you know what? I wasn't even sad about it. I was too busy planning my next move in what I'd started calling my new hobby, legal revenge. And business was about to be booming. A month later, I was sitting in Mom's living room watching reruns of The Office and feeling almost human again when my phone rang. Dr. Patel's name flashed on the screen, and my heart immediately did that thing where it tries to escape through your ribcage. Phone calls from your oncologist are never casual. They don't just ring you up to chat about the weather or ask how your fantasy football league is going. When the cancer doctor calls, it's either really good news or really bad news, and there's no in between. Hello. I answered, my voice doing that weird cracking thing it does when I'm nervous. I have your latest scan results, Dr. Patel said, and I swear to God, the 3 seconds between that sentence and his next one were the longest 3 seconds of my entire life. Time slowed down. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I could feel every single breath. Mom had paused her own show in the kitchen and was staring at me through the doorway, her mom senses apparently alerting her that important phone call was happening. And I managed to croak out. You're heading toward remission, Dr. Patel said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. The tumors have shrunk significantly. If you continue responding this well, we're looking at a very positive outcome. You're beating this. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I cried. Not cute, single tear rolling down the cheek movie crying. Full on, ugly, can't breathe, face scrunched up sobbing. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep in your soul where you've been storing all the fear and anger and exhaustion from the past few months. I cried so hard that Mom came running in from the kitchen thinking something was wrong, and I had to wave her off while simultaneously trying to thank Dr. Patel through my sobs. You're welcome, he said kindly. You did this. Your body fought, and you won. Well, you're winning. We're not done yet, but you're winning. After I hung up, after I'd managed to explain to Mom through my tears that no, nothing was wrong. Everything was actually right for once in my godforsaken life. After she'd hugged me so tight, I thought my ribs might crack. I started laughing. Just absolutely losing it. Laughing like a maniac. Because the absurdity of the whole situation finally hit me. Mary had tried to sabotage my treatment, had been planning her future without me, had literally been counting down the days until I died, and I was going to live. Her evil plan had backfired so spectacularly that it was almost poetic, almost Shakespearean. Except Shakespeare would have made it more tragic, and this was a comedy. A dark, twisted comedy, but a comedy nonetheless. I'm going to live, I said out loud, testing how the words sounded. They sounded good, really good. I'm actually going to beat this thing. Damn right you are, Mom said, wiping her own tears away. You're too stubborn to die? I always said that. I spent the rest of the day in this weird euphoric state, calling people to share the news. My brother, who lived in Seattle and had been worrying from afar. A few close friends who'd been checking in regularly. Linda, who screamed so loud when I told her that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Even Patricia, my lawyer, who said, "Excellent news. Now we can really make Mary regret her life choices. It's so much more satisfying when you're alive to enjoy your revenge." I should have known the universe wouldn't let me have one purely good day without throwing some bullshit into the mix. That evening, I was scrolling through my phone, still riding the high of not dying, when I saw it. A Facebook post from Mary. Because of course she was on Facebook. Of course she had to make this about her. The post featured a photo of us together, one from early in my treatment when I still had some hair left and hadn't yet discovered that my wife was a cartoon villain. We were smiling at the camera, her arm around my shoulder, both of us looking like a couple united against adversity. The caption read, "My brave husband is beating cancer. So proud of him and grateful for this journey we've been on together. He's my hero." Red heart, hashtag love, hashtag faith, hashtag miracle, hashtag cancer survivor, hashtag blessed, hashtag stronger together. I stared at my phone, my mouth literally hanging open, trying to process the sheer audacity of what I was reading. My brave husband. My hero. This journey we've been on together. The hashtags alone were enough to make me want to throw my phone across the room. Blessed? Stronger together? Lady, you tried to murder me with essential oils and positive thinking. Mom, I yelled, because this level of delusion required a witness. Mom, you need to see this. She came running in, probably thinking I'd fallen or the cancer had suddenly come back or the house was on fire. I showed her the post, and I watched her face go through the same journey mine had just taken: confusion, disbelief, and finally, pure rage. That absolute. Mom caught herself, took a deep breath. She's rewriting history. She's making herself look like the supportive wife while you're getting all the sympathy and attention. She's building an alibi, I realized. She's creating a public narrative where she was this devoted, loving spouse the whole time. So when the divorce comes out, people will think I'm the bad guy for leaving her. Not if we have anything to say about it, Mom said grimly. I called Patricia immediately. It was 8 p.m., probably after business hours, but Patricia had told me to call any time, and this felt like an emergency. She picked up on the second ring. She did what? Patricia said after I'd explained the Facebook post situation. "Oh, that's ballsy. That's impressively ballsy, but also incredibly stupid." "How is it stupid?" I asked. "She's getting hundreds of likes and comments saying how amazing she is, what a wonderful wife she is, how relationship goals we are." I made a gagging noise. People are eating this up. "It's stupid because she's creating a public record of her lies," Patricia explained, and I could practically hear her smile through the phone. "Screenshot that post. Screenshot all the comments. Save everything. Because when we file the divorce papers and present our evidence of her affair and her attempts to sabotage your treatment, this post is going to make her look even worse. She's lying to hundreds of people publicly. A judge is going to love that. So you're saying her attempt to look good is actually going to backfire?" Spectacularly, Patricia confirmed. "In fact, I think it's time. Let's file. Tomorrow. Let's serve her the papers while everyone still has her supportive wife post fresh in their minds." Really, my heart started racing for an entirely different reason now. This was it. This was the moment where I officially, legally, said screw you to Mary and everything she'd done. "Really," Patricia said. "I've got everything prepared. We've got the emails, the evidence of the affair, testimony from your nurse about what she witnessed, your mother's statement about Mary showing up and making threats. We've got her dead to rights. Time to make it official." The next day, Patricia filed the divorce papers. Professional, efficient, devastating. But the real masterstroke? The timing of the service. Patricia had done her research, because of course she had. The woman was terrifyingly thorough, and discovered that Mary had lunch at the same trendy salad place every Wednesday at noon. She went with her work friends, sat at the same outdoor table, ordered the same overpriced salad with the dressing on the side, because Mary was the kind of person who ordered dressing on the side. Patricia had the papers served to her there, at lunch, in front of her friends, by a process server who walked right up to their table and said, in a voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "Mary Reynolds, you've been served." I wasn't there to witness it personally, but Patricia had hired a private investigator to document the moment. "For legal purposes," she said, though I suspect she also just wanted me to have the satisfaction of seeing Mary's face when it happened. The PI sent me photos later that day, and they were glorious. Mary, frozen mid-bite of her kale quinoa whatever salad, staring at the papers in shock. Her friends looking confused and concerned. The moment where her carefully constructed facade of the devoted wife crumbled in real time. She called me 17 times that afternoon. 17. I didn't answer. She texted me 43 times. Yes, I counted, because at a certain point it became funny. The texts progressed from, "We need to talk," to "This is a huge misunderstanding," to "How could you do this to me?" to increasingly unhinged messages about how I was ruining her life and destroying her reputation. Her reputation. The woman who'd been cheating on her cancer patient husband was worried about her reputation. The irony was almost too much. Her lawyer called Patricia that same afternoon. Patricia conferenced me in on the call, and I got to listen to Mary's attorney, some dude named Richard who sounded like he'd rather be literally anywhere else, try to negotiate. "My client would like to discuss a settlement," Richard said in that lawyer voice that tries to sound confident but really just sounds tired. "Perhaps we can resolve this amicably, without going to court. Your client committed adultery while her husband was undergoing chemotherapy for cancer," Patricia said flatly. She attempted to convince him to stop his treatment in favor of pseudoscientific alternatives. "We have emails documenting her affair and her discussions with her lover about waiting for her husband to die. So no, Richard, I don't think we'll be settling amicably." There was a long pause. "Those are serious allegations. Those are documented facts," Patricia corrected. "We have evidence. Lots of evidence. Emails, witness testimony, photographs. If your client wants to take this to court, we're happy to. We're happy to make all of this very, very public. I'm sure the local news would love a story about a woman who cheated on her husband while he was fighting cancer. It's got everything: betrayal, medical drama, a handsome doctor. It's basically a Lifetime movie. We could probably sell the rights." Another pause. Longer this time. "Let me talk to my client." "You do that," Patricia said cheerfully. "We'll be waiting." Mary folded faster than a cheap lawn chair in a hurricane. Within a week, her lawyer called back with a settlement offer that gave me basically everything I wanted. The house, most of the savings, her agreement to pay my legal fees. All I had to do was sign an NDA agreeing not to publicly discuss the details of our divorce. "Absolutely not," I said when Patricia told me. "I'm not signing that." "You sure?" Patricia asked. "It's a good deal financially." "I'm sure," I said. "I don't want her money. I want everyone to know what she did. I want Dr. Chin's bosses to know he was having an affair with a patient's spouse. I want our friends to know why we're really getting divorced. No NDA." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I like the way you think. Let me call Richard back." When Mary realized I wasn't going to take the NDA deal, when she realized I was fully prepared to let this all play out in public court, she caved completely. Signed papers giving me everything without the NDA requirement. Just wanted it done. Wanted it over, wanted to move on with her life. Too late for that, Mary. Way too late. 6 months later, I walked out of Dr. Patel's office officially cancer-free. No more chemo. No more recliners of doom. Just regular checkups and a future I'd earned by being too damn stubborn to die. The divorce finalized the same week. Mary got nothing but her own shame and a severely damaged reputation. Dr. Chin got reported to the hospital board. Turned out having affairs with patient spouses was frowned upon. Who knew? I moved into my own apartment, small but mine, with windows that didn't overlook parking lot betrayals. Mom visited every weekend with enough food to feed a small army and unsolicited dating advice I pretended to hate, but secretly appreciated. I started volunteering at the cancer center, helping new patients laugh through the nightmare. That's where I met Tara. Wicked sense of humor, zero tolerance for bullshit, could roast anyone in under 10 seconds. We grabbed coffee after sessions. Real coffee, not betrayal-flavored espresso. Now when people ask how I beat cancer, I tell them, chemo helped. But mostly, I was too damn stubborn to let my wife's boyfriend win. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone else. It's outliving their expectations and looking good doing it.